Panning slowly in their direction, a small infrared camera narrowed its lens, while off in some distant corner of the laboratory, two tall figures loomed above a table filled with computer screens. The images they bore shifted every now and again, providing a full view of each and every corridor.
Well, 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 look at what the cat dragged in, one of the two men mused.
Cat? That looks to me like that's a vampire, the other contended in a far brasher tone.
Let's leave the technicalities in the science lab, shall we?
If you say so. Flickering across the screen, both figures watched as Sam's shadow continued to tear through guard after guard before the camera itself went black. And what of that? The brasher of the two asked. Frivolous. The archetype is not my concern, nor should it be yours.
The boy, he's the prize.
Their gaze shifted toward Ryan and Rain. The boy?
The blade and the stone.
2 for the price of 1. And what of the girl?
What of her?
What indeed? You know what they're here for, don't you?
I do.
Well, perhaps this would be a good opportunity to test out that latest freak of yours.
Is that a challenge?
There came a pause. Just a friendly wager.
I wasn't aware psychopaths like to work together, Rain scowled. Doesn't matter how many people he's got, we have Hain on our side.
I hope you're right about that. Ryan quickened his pace down the ever-darkening hall in search of this telltale wall Christie was talking about, while somewhere off in the dark strange sounds began to creep forth and the lights exhibited an odd flux.
Is that Hain?
Ryan threw a nervous glance over his shoulder at the ominous metallic sound. I don't think so. Come on, we have to... Oh, shit! Rounding the corner, he stopped and drew a deep breath as they found themselves at a dead end. That's not good.
Test the door, Rain snapped. I'll cover you.
Door? What door? It took him a second to realize. A wall that's not a wall. Duh. Shaking his head, he threw up the blade and the wall began to fade out, revealing the etchings of a magnificently grotesque entry point. Minted in gold, it depicted an intricate scene of the Archangel with a spear standing atop a mound of demonic entities as they writhed their way up from the gates of hell. Drawing a steady breath, Ryan stood back while the horrible sounds began to draw closer. Grabbing Rain, he yanked her through despite being unaware of what waited for them on the other side. Stretching outward about 6 or 7 yards, the room in which they now found themselves was unlike what anyone might have imagined. Almost every inch of it that wasn't either tapestries or brilliant red carpeting glistened like the sun under the soft auburn glow of 2 brilliant chandeliers. The spectacle, however, was not the room itself, but that which it contained. Hundreds of rare and unbelievable artifacts covered every inch of the shelving, many of which were encased in crystal glass. 2 ivory lions with gold and ruby eyes stood on either side of a small desk toward the front, where a large crystalline globe sat amidst a treasure trove of rarities that would have put most museums to shame. Ryan, however, was not interested in such things. His attention fell instead to the 2 spinning blades, or rather the blade and the staff, that were currently contained by some manner of electricity inside a pair of large glass tubes. One of them unmistakably belonged to Sorin. Vanishing from his hand, his own weapon retreated, not by command, but perhaps a conscious fear of a device capable of restraining the others. Racing past the blade, as well as the bright golden scepter, Ryan noticed the back wall, which was not a wall at all, but a gigantic fish tank. Pretty ornate for a maniac, Rain mused, eyes flaring emerald as they fell upon the artifacts. Ryan wasn't listening. Pounding his fists across the tank, he looked frantic at the sight of Sorin, who appeared to be passed out at the bottom of it. God damn it, I'll kill the one who did this! Launching a punch of dark energy toward the glass, the hit bounced off, causing him to wince and buckle over as his knuckles began to bleed. You know, an ominous voice called from behind as the golden doors began to close. That's not a very nice way to treat other people's things. Standing at the edge of a long runner rug were 2 young men. The boy who had addressed them could not have been older than 10. Dressed in a neon blue t-shirt, he wore a black jacket that fell just below his knees. Regarding them through a pair of rounded glasses, his gaze was narrowed in a less than youthful manner, hair drawn back in a spiked fashion that would have made even Vancelin cry. If the child wasn't intimidating, the dark-haired, grisly teenager that stood beside him brandishing an ivory katana surely would have been. Says a porcupine, Rain scoffed as she turned, eyes flaring red. Staring at them defiantly, she grew confident she could make short work of them both. It was like being at school all over again, she thought grimly before she noticed the blade. She missed such swords, but one of ivory would have felt perfect in her hands. The child met Rain's gaze as he stumbled over a lisp which came through around his S's. Your insults are meaningless. I'm going to enjoy watching him tear you apart. As if on command, the boy with the sword spun it upward and motioned at them with 2 fingers. Rain flashed a smile that exposed her fangs and fired the rifle she'd borrowed from one of the guards. As the coil shot toward him, he slid out of the way so fast that by the time her hand was off the trigger, he was standing directly in front of her. Slicing forward, he went to hack her from the side, however, was stopped abruptly when Ryan locked blades with him through narrowed eyes. Rain scarcely had time to move out of the way. Leaping over his leg, she aimed the rifle at his face and managed to avoid the blood splatter which fizzled across the floor in long black streaks. Ugh, disgusting. Ryan shook his head as the boy fell face down. Well, that was easy.
I wouldn't be so sure of that.
The child snickered, and when Rain made the mistake of stepping over the body, he suddenly reached up again. Grabbing her by the arm, he swung her into the desk before vaulting to his feet. His face was completely unharmed. Charging him in her stead, Ryan took a leap with his sword, and the teen actually caught it before he had the chance to come down. Wrapping his hand around the blade, his own fell from them, only to be caught by a second pair of arms that suddenly tore through his shirt, and Ryan let go just in time to avoid being impaled. Catching herself, Rain's expression became perplexity as she realized the teen was unharmed. Such recovery was impossible, even for a vampire. Unfortunately, she didn't have time to ponder it. Raising her hand, she commanded her energy to wrap around the katana and pull it away from its wielder. As the blade was yanked from his grip, the creature turned to face her. Holding up its original hands, it cracked each one of its knuckles in sequence before fanning its fingers and retracting a set of dangerously long claws. Taking the opportunity to attack, Ryan swung his sword, summoning several tendrils of darkness that sprung up from the ground to entangle the beast. Effectively stuck, it wasn't going anywhere, and it didn't look happy. "Are you okay?" he asked, whilst giving the creature a wide berth. "Of course I'm okay. I thought you were going to lose to Forearms over here, though. He's a regenerator. Think he can regenerate something like his head? Just help me break this glass." Ryan attempted to bring his blade against the tank, though it was suddenly torn from his hands by a frightening blue current that threw it halfway across the room. Jaw dropping, he spun in confusion as the little boy, who still stood beside the door, began to shake his head. "Amateur," he grumbled, eyes falling on the creature.
Why do I always have to do everything myself?
"It's pretty sad when your hulking partner is just deadweight," Rain snapped. "You want him?" she asked Ryan. "He's just a kid. What could he possibly—" Before he was able to finish, the child stepped forward and a strange current ran up the side of his arms, although that was not what made him stop. Tearing through the back of his coat, 6 long, tendril-like appendages hovered above him. Each one was tipped with an enormous metallic claw that snapped open, revealing jagged saw-like edges in all 3 directions. With one hand, he caught the Tesla coil Rain had fired and slowly totted a finger back and forth while the current returned to her. Ducking the blow, she let go of the rifle and promptly threw out her energy. The boy blocked her attack and held his position. "He's the one trapping the other 2, Ryan snapped, coming to recognize the energy as the same one that held the Dawn Cutter and the Twilight Scepter. Unfortunately, without his weapon, he was limited, meaning Rain would have to contend with the child, alone. "Just hold Forearms, I'll take care of him," she said as she stepped forward. "Come on, kid, this isn't funny."
Funny?
His claws opened and he sent balls of current at her the size of SUVs.
Who says I'm laughing?
Blocking the attack with her shields, Rain had to swerve to avoid being fried. "We could do this all day, Shrimp."
Thanks, but I got other plans.
Racing toward her, he clamped a hold of her darkness and began to pump her defenses full of electricity. Rain's eyes flared black as she endured the heavy voltage. Bumps began to rise across her skin and she stepped back, causing the boy to stagger. Falling forward, he slammed his claws into the ground and one of them fell directly in front of him, taking the knife she pulled from her pocket. The attack drew blood and he knocked her aside. "Ryan, get me a sword," she called, knowing she couldn't very well take him without one. "Here, catch!" Reaching for the creature's katana, he threw it toward her. Doing just that, as the tendrils came down, she swung the blade with practiced ease, and the look that crossed the teen's face as the young boy cracked it in half was one of mortification. Meanwhile, Ryan had come to a sudden realization. Reaching into his pocket, he noticed he still had the tablet they'd managed to take from Sam. "Hey, Rain, I think I have us some backup." Suddenly the lights began to dim, and the child looked up as the shadows crept in an unnatural manner. "See ya," Rain winked at the boy, bounding off to Ryan's side. "I'll buy Sam dinner if he manages to get us out of here." "You and me both." The darkness suddenly coiled upward. Turning curiously, the boy's eyes followed it and widened in horror at the towering fiend that began to take form. Pulling back from its face, the cloud of black haze departed and the beast roared with dripping green teeth. Tearing from the room as fast as he could, the child screamed for his father and ran off in hysterics while the disgruntled teenager made a beeline right after him. "Chicken shits," Rain grinned. That is, until the shadows suddenly turned on them. "Hey, wait! You can't! You have to listen! The stone, you have to!" Unfortunately, it didn't, and without his blade, Ryan could only stand there and watch. Closing his eyes, he braced as it lunged, though thankfully the blow never came. Instead, what erupted was a blinding white light that shot up around them like a shield, tearing straight through the darkness and dissolving it to dust. Sam hit the floor and Ryan opened his eyes to a gentle tapping from behind. His expression quickly became one of relief and mild amusement at the sight of Soren, who offered them both a slight grin. Before anyone could say anything, however, Sam marched up and snatched the stone from Ryan's hand. "Give me that, you dipshit!" Coddling it with a pout, he paid little attention as Ryan turned toward his cousin. "Do you know how to break this thing?" Soren crossed his arms. "Didn't think so." "There has to be something." Ryan grabbed a heavy paperweight off the desk. Pulling away from the glass as it hit and bounced off, Soren shook his head and pointed toward the weapons. Sound didn't carry in water, so trying to communicate was pointless, but Ryan seemed to understand. Hurrying down the steps, he went for the dawn cutter, which was currently trapped in the strange glass tube. "Hey, Sam, could you come here a minute?" "Screw you," he hissed, though actually did walk over. "You think you can reach through that?" "Are you serious? Dude, I like my arm." "You can move through solid matter. I've seen you do it. Just reach out and take it. It's not going to hurt you." Sam shuffled the tablet into his wounded hand. "I'm not going to wind up like that, am I?" He threw a nod toward Soren. "No, it'll return to him the moment it's free of that thing." Balling a fist, he bit his lip and nervously reached forward. Unfortunately, a voice caused him to stop. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Turning around, both he and Ryan threw glances in the direction of the door where now stood two older men, one dressed in a black suit, the other a long white lab coat with a pair of dark-rimmed glasses. Clinging to his side was the little boy who'd nearly turned Rain into mincemeat. "They did it," he whined as he tugged on the man's coat. "It was them." "Way to bring your dad into this, you little brat." Stepping forward, the man in the suit spoke first. "Bravo, I'm impressed. You're quite an interesting set of specimens. The Trinity boy, a vampire, and the archetype. Impressive indeed. I see you're well at work admiring my collection." A thin smile crossed his face while Ryan's eyes narrowed in anger. "You let my cousin go, you sick fuck!" The man's smile only broadened. "Actually, I believe it is you who will be joining him. Not in quite the leisure, I'm afraid. See, I only have room for one trophy, and as much as I'd like to put you all on display, your blades will have to suffice." Baring his teeth, Soren could hear him through the glass and looked rightfully furious. "As for you two," the man sneered, "I think I'll be adding that tablet of yours to my mantle, and perhaps I'll send you back to your hellhole in a box. And you," he looked at Rain, "I think I'll leave you to the professor. He has quite the knack for the supernatural." Narrowing his gaze, the man in the lab coat eyed her. "My son tells me you have an interesting energy output. I'd like to examine that in greater detail." "I'd like to stick your head on a pike," she snarled. "You keep an attitude like that," the professor began, "you may very well wind up being a fence decoration yourself." The air suddenly took on a strange feel, and before any of them had the chance to react, the energy around them started to constrict. "What the—" Falling to the ground, the tablet dropped from Sam's hands as his arms were pinned by some kind of intangible force. Struggling against it, Ryan grit his teeth and inevitably wound up on his knees. Soren saw what was happening and raced toward the glass. Unfortunately, the professor was one step ahead. Gaze lowering, the child hurried forward and his eyes peeled toward the tank, which was suddenly riveted by a violent current. Watching them drop her friends, Rain lashed out, and the man in the suit was the one to intervene this time. As the binds flew towards him, they came to a stop about 6 feet short, smacking into some kind of shielding that manifested in the form of a thin whitish film. The doctor shook his head while toting a finger from side to side. "Such a naughty girl. I believe someone needs a timeout. Professor?" His eyes slid toward the other man, whose gaze was met with a nod. "You, boy, collect the artifacts," he ordered the child, who slowly picked up both Sam's tablet and Ryan's blade, which was currently encased in the same energy as the others. "Fuck you!" Rain screamed while she continued to struggle. "You've got quite the mouth on you," the doctor scoffed as the boy handed him the trinkets. Patting him on the head, he sent him off. "You can have the feisty one," he told the professor once the boy had left. "I will deal with the other two as I see fit." "Of course, I always get your scraps." "Be grateful I'm giving you anything at all. Now take her and go!" The binding that held the three of them suddenly tightened, and one by one they began to slip from consciousness. Teetering on the brink, the pressure increased, and the next thing they knew was the dark. When Ryan came to, he was no longer in any discernible location. Dark patterned walls spread out in all directions, while thick silver bars kept him from the rest of the room. Saddled with a splitting headache and a stiffness that felt unnatural, it took a moment for him to gather his thoughts, though once he did, a rush of overwhelming despair began to fill him. Pounding his fists across the cold, hard steel, he winced as he came upon something sharp and reached into his pocket to pull out a small moon-shaped amulet with a thin Latin inscription still scribbled across the back. Meanwhile, the room in which Rain now found herself was of a completely different design. Decked out in white, it resembled more of a doctor's office than a hospital laboratory. Various machines replaced the disturbing dissection equipment, while suspended above a long operating table were frightening and subjectable objects whose purposes remained unclear. It wasn't long before the professor entered the room. Alongside him was the child who had inadvertently been the cause of their capture. "Ah, good, you're awake," the man announced, turning to check a small computer screen to the left. "Get away from me," Rain snarled. "The more you fight that, the tighter those straps are going to get." He tapped several portions of the display screen, which caused a massive needle-like projection to lower itself from the ceiling. Situating directly above her chest, it hovered there and started to spin. "Is this what you were looking for?" The boy handed him an odd device and received a nod. "That'll do. Keep an eye on her while I install this." Red eyes widened as the needle lowered and Rain's chest tightened with fear. "What are you going to do?" she asked the boy. "I'm not going to do anything." He glanced at the computer screen. "This machine, on the other hand?" "Why are you doing this? This isn't right." "Right and wrong are subjective concepts. I only do what I'm told." The professor returned and took to the machine. Setting a small jar on the base of the device, he unscrewed the cap. "Dizra, get over here. I need you to apply a teravolt in order to operate this properly." The boy complied with the objection. Approaching it, he placed a hand across its side, which in turn caused the needle to spin at a frightening pace. Black bonds leapt forth in an effort to stop it, and the moment they did, they were drained from the girl as a regular needle drains blood. "Excellent. Saves me the trouble," the professor mused, while the dark aura began to collect within the jar. "What is that, Dad?" "Power." "Can I trust you to keep an eye on her for me?" he asked the child. "Just replace the jar when it's full. There's a box of them on the table." "You son of a bitch!" Rain looked sick. "I'll kill you," she swore. "I'm thinking not if this machine kills you first," the boy said rather flatly while his father walked from the room. "You're a sick little brat, you know that? Your dad's a monster." Struggling against the straps, she could feel her gaze getting weaker. Her mouth was dry from screaming and her skin felt like paper. The boy went to grab another jar and was about to replace it when a strange sound caught his attention. Furrowing a brow, he turned just in time to have his face met with the side of a metal bat. Swinging it upward in a playful manner, there stood Vance, whistling to himself as he used his sleeve to wipe away the excess blood that still clung to its surface. Noticing Rain, he gave a smile. "Miss me?" "Vance, I'm so glad to see you." She could hardly believe what she was saying, but it was the truth. "Well, that's a first," he muttered as the bat vanished in a flutter of black smoke. Stepping over the unconscious youth, he approached the machine and tilted his head. The control board was foreign to him, and he slammed it with a fist, causing the entire thing to malfunction. Shaking wildly, the needle started to jitter as the electrical current that ran it died, and it came to dangle like a limp appendage while Vance reached out to take the jar. Dropping it to the floor, it shattered. "Oops," he scoffed as the energy fluttered back to Rain. Shutting her eyes, she let out a sigh. "I need to be unstrapped." Yeah, hold your damn horses." Taking a step back, he snapped his fingers, and the bonds around her uncoiled. "Come on, let's get the fuck out of here." "He has the weapons, and the others." "I'm aware, but we're not getting them out on our own. Not without Shadow Boy." Vance helped her to her feet and threw out a hand to summon a portal. "Can you walk, or what?" "I'm fine," she lied, despite feeling as though she'd been hit by a bus. "Right then, come on." The portal reacted in much the same way as it did for Ryan, only instead of a light that transported them, it was a sweeping deluge of darkness. Opening on the other side, it revealed a well-lit room. Several men and women dressed in white lab attire stopped what they were doing. However, Vance was one step ahead. Snapping his fingers, he sent each of them to the ground as black energy erupted off the floor, latched onto various portions of their bodies, and sucked them dry. Ignoring the 6 or 7 mangled corpses, he peered around the room, which held various machines as well as a large pedestal upon which sat a small glass case. Inside lay the tablet. Currently hooked to some kind of device, it appeared to be draining or perhaps simply displacing the light through a large tube that ran up through the ceiling into a room on the other side. "How are we getting in there?" Rain asked. "I don't know. Look around. See if you can smash it with something." Standing on his toes near the door, Vance peered through the small white window. There was Sam. Bunched in a ball, he was huddled in the corner with his hat pulled over his face while a blinding white light poured in from all directions. The door was too heavy for them to open, and truth be told, Vance wasn't certain he wanted to be touched by the light on the other side. Walking back to Rain, he looked down at the stone and brought a hand to his chin. "We gotta get this thing out of here first. It's frying them. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather not add charbroiled to my running list of near-death experiences. Stand back." Reaching up, he summoned the bat again. "And you might want to shield your eyes." Rain did just that. I hope you know what you're doing.
Not a damn clue,
he said as he brought it down across the glass, which shattered into 100 tiny pieces and blew him halfway across the floor. Vance? Lying there, he'd been thrown nearly 30 feet as the light shot backward upon impact.
Ugh, try the door.
Rain rushed over and pulled it open. Badly singed, a good portion of Sam's arms and face were covered in burnt lacerations. Shaken and in pain, he winced as she tried to pull him up. It's okay, we're gonna get you out of here.
He's not gonna be any use to anyone like that.
Vance caught him by the arm, and before he had the chance to protest, a surge of dark energy bore itself into Sam's flesh, repairing the damage. What the fuck? What the hell did you just do to me?
I fixed you, Vance hissed. Which is more than you deserve, you little shit.
Since when did you become a healer? Rain let go. How are we getting out of here anyway? Please tell me you ate Conveyor and his geeky partner. Vance held out a hand to summon another portal.
We're getting out of here by getting back to that room and releasing those blades, he informed them. And as far as the death squad goes, I wouldn't touch either of them with a 10-foot pole. Besides, if they even knew I existed, don't you think I'd be in the exact same predicament you two are in? Or worse?
I want my rock, Sam groaned and walked out to reclaim the stone. We can't just let them get away with this.
Interfering with Dr. Frankenstein is not part of the job description. Once we're out of here, you two can do what you want. But as long as I'm the one running the show, I say we get what we came for and get the hell out of Dodge.
Vance stepped through the portal, which in turn led them back to the large golden room, currently unoccupied thanks to Ryan, who happened to be waiting for them when they arrived. Rain, Sam, thank God. Rushing over, he caught her by the shoulders and breathed a heavy sigh of relief. I thought you were done for. Sam only stood there while Vance rolled his eyes. Where's Soren? Rain asked. Turning toward the tank, Ryan nodded in his direction. Awake again, he looked exhausted, though thankfully still in one piece.
Well, come on, then. What the fuck are you all standing around here for?
Vance hissed.
You, Shadow Boy, get those blades out of that thing so we can all go home.
Sam's eyes came to rest on the 3 pillars still containing the weapons. Walking over, he attempted to put his hand through the glass. Like the hotel wall and the sand before it, his fingers slipped straight through the shadows to wrap around the side of the Night Striker, which he managed to pull directly out of confinement. Vanishing in a flash of red light, it reappeared in Ryan's hand, much to everyone's surprise. Holy! Yanking away from the viscous, Sam's eyes widened.
Oogle over it later!
Vance screamed as an ear-piercing alarm began to sound overhead and bright red lights took the place of the white ones.
Let's go!
Sam went to pull the scepter as it too vanished before his eyes fell on the Dawn Cutter and he approached with hesitation. You can do it, Sam, Rain encouraged him. We have to hurry. You sure this thing isn't gonna fuck me up? No, Ryan screamed. Just take it. Thrusting his hand into the current, Sam closed his eyes and pulled as hard as he could while the door swung open, revealing the doctor accompanied by half a dozen guards. Raising their guns, the bullets were laced with tranquilizers and paralyzing agents that would have been the end of them, should they have made even the slightest contact. Vance closed his eyes and braced against the impact, creating a wide barrier akin to Rain's, which managed to successfully deflect a good number of shots. Sam stood nervously while Ryan raised his blade, and many of the men were flung against the opposing wall. His concentration was broken, however, by a strange sound from behind. Pausing momentarily, they turned just in time to see Soren raise the Dawn Cutter while hairline fractures crept up the glass.
Oh, shit!
Vance brought up his hands, as did Sam, at the massive deluge that suddenly raced forward when it shattered. Of the 4 of them, Ryan was the only one who stood his ground. Racing past him, the water parted between the group, instead taking those who would have otherwise meant them harm. No one stuck around. We did it! Rain laughed, exposing her fangs in a rare smile. That's great, Sam stammered. Now why don't we get the fuck out of this place before they decide to come back? Sounds like a plan to me. Ryan threw a look toward Soren, who was now hovering amidst the empty space that had once been the tank. Saying nothing, he only offered a nod and raised his own weapon in unison as the 2 of them summoned a way out.